This week in Idaho, the search for who will steer Boise State next ramps up. The Ninth Circuit blocks California's ammo background checks. And finally, Kohberger is sentenced for life behind bars. And Weston, which you may or may not know is our other big potato producer here in the state, lays off workers, but stocks leap. That and so much more. This is the Yokel Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Welcome, glad to have you here with us, and happy cooler weather. As I say this, you could maybe tell, or you might notice throughout the episode, I am also hot. I know it was cooler at the beginning of the week, and it's supposed to stay cooler throughout the rest of the week as we go along here. And I think there's supposed to be even some thunderstorms maybe on Thursday. So that is very encouraging for us after having a very warm year. Granted, there again, it hasn't been the regular scorcher that I feel like it's usually been. It's been a little bit more cyclical. So it ramps up and then it ramps down. So it's not just constantly cooking us, which is nice. Hopefully that means the high temperatures are behind us, that they aren't going to keep haunting us, and we'll actually be able to enjoy some really nice, cool 80s. It's funny, during the middle of winter when you say that, you're like, oh, it's 80. Someone thinks you're going to be roasted because it hits 50, and you feel like, oh, I can go out in short sleeves. It's funny how our bodies adapt with that. With this nice weather, and for those new to the state, this does mean it is time to probably go outside and enjoy the great outdoors. In Idaho, there's two perfect windows of weather to go out and do stuff. One is in the spring when it's all beautiful and it's just lush. Everything is green. It is beautiful. It hasn't got cooked by the summer heat and everything. And it's just coming out of winter with all the water and stuff. And it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. And then there's the fall where it's also not cooking you. There again, it's a little bit warmer. Things are a lot more dry. So if you don't like running into more puddles and wet stuff, it's nice to have that, especially in the mountains. Also, there's more areas you can get to in the fall because springtime, if you're new to the state there again, especially here in the Treasure Valley, if you're going to be going hiking or something, you have a very limited area because the snow stays there until about like June or July. I discovered that one year when I was getting more into hiking when I was younger, and that was disappointing. But when you come to the fall time of year, that's not as much the case. Most all of the snow has melted off because we've gone through the fire burner. You can go to most of the different areas hiking, but it is cooler, so the temperatures come down. Vice versa, spring, you don't have as many bugs, fall you do. So pluses and minuses, but we generally just have two really good time frames to go hiking, assuming the fall doesn't have fires that bring a lot of smoke into the air, which is not fun for doing anything outdoors. But so far, we're doing pretty good. On that, though, I wanted to see what you guys think, because I'm actually going to take some footage. Where should I go with this nice weather? I know I'm considering the Hell's Canyon area to go over there and do some hiking that I discovered some new trails. There's also McCall, which is a go-to for me here in the Treasure Valley, or the Sawtooths, which, if you've ever been to the Sawtooths, just can't get enough of them. So please let me know down in the comments section, depending on which way you want me to go, because then I can take some footage and I can share it on the show for you here in the next week or two when I go. All that said, and speaking of which, heading up into the lineup for this week, the first half, you already know it. We have Boise State, background checks, and Kohberger. But for the middle, we have something equally fascinating with news about RFK Jr. visiting Idaho, Dorothy Moon getting in some trouble. If you don't know, she's the head of the Republican Party. And Nampa voters getting a chance to decide. If you've watched our previous episodes, you'll know what that deciding is on. Plus, to close us out, we have Boise's electric trucks, which are raising prices for you to get your trash taken away. Also, the Stibnite mine hits another lawsuit because, you got to have those. And the Deer Flat Refuge in Nampa expands. Plus more. So stay with us till the end for those stories and much more. Any further ado, starting with the first one here, Boise State's hunt for a new president just hit a milestone. By last Friday's priority deadline, the State Board of Education's logged 42 applicants. The 8-member search committee, chaired by board member David Turnbull, now shifts through resumes under strict non-disclosure agreements. As for why exactly that is, Idaho law lets the public see the only 5 final names, so for now, the process has to stay behind closed doors. But for some context, if you haven't been keeping up with this, Merrill Trope, which was the past president, exited in the spring to the University of Vermont, ending a 6-year turbulent employment there at BSU, which had steady clashes with the Idaho legislature over diversity, equity, and inclusion spending. Lawmakers even trimmed BSU's budget by $2 million in 2025 to send a message about, quote, left-leaning activism, end quote, on campus. Trope's era also left a costly legal bruise, as you may remember from our reporting. The Big City Coffee verdict and related fees now top about $5 million after a jury ruled the university violated the pro-police owners' First Amendment rights. Plus, you add on the recent departures of the CFO Alicia Esty and Provost John Buck Walter, and Boise State faces actually a rare chance to reset its priorities with all of this. Conservative Idahoans hope that this possibly means the next president may lean into academic rigor and fiscal stewardship rather than ideological projects. The committee insists it will move deliberately, not hastily, end quote. But every week without a permanent leader does leave the university in some limbo. With 42 contenders and counting, the pool stays open until the petition is full. The spotlight now shifts to whether the board will pick a candidate who realigns Boise State with Idaho's values while steering the Broncos toward growth. And coming to the story you've all been looking forward to, the Ninth Circuit just delivered a welcome win for gun owners. In a 2-1 decision on July 24th, the panel struck down California's voter-backed 2019 rule that forced every ammunition buyer to clear a background check. Judge Sandra Ikuta wrote that the scheme, quote, meaningfully constrains, end quote, the right to keep and bear arms because a firearm is useless without ammo. Now you might be asking, why does this matter to Idaho? Why shouldn't it should more be the question. It applies very much. Sacramento has treated its laws like export goods, leaning on sheer market size to nudge manufacturers and, by extension, other states toward California's style of restrictions. If this ammo rule had survived, copycat bills would almost surely have surfaced in blue-controlled legislatures and pressured retailers nationwide. The court reached this ruling by applying the Supreme Court's 2022 Brune test, which we mentioned in our article about the U.S. Postal Service actually having some gun-related things. You can check that out on our Substack. It says that modern gun limits must fit within the nation's historic tradition of regulation. California's attorneys, as you can guess, could not find a founding-era parallel for background checks on ammo. The majority therefore affirmed a permanent injunction first issued by District Judge Robert Benitez in 2024. As for the reaction from Governor Gavin Newsom, or Patrick Bateman, he blasted the ruling as, quote, a slap in the face, end quote. But critics note that the law got rejected at 11% of transactions in 2023, mostly because the state's database couldn't match buyers to their own firearm records, not because felons tried to load up, per se. Now, in conclusion, you might have already thought of this, and yes, it would be better for lawmakers to be the ones actually stopping this in the first place and respecting the Second Amendment and it not having to be the courts. We've seen that in many instances with Trump on the national side. Still, though, we should thank God that the courts remain willing to enforce the First and Second Amendment in this case, especially with the court that made this ruling. The Ninth Circuit isn't known for its conservative bona fides. That said, though, the court's decision on curbing overreach is very encouraging. This could have rippled far beyond the Golden State and hopefully reminds politicians that the constitutional rights are not optional when they're writing laws. And coming back to Idaho, still in national news, Brian Kohberger now faces 4 back-to-back life terms, plus 10 years for burglary, after Judge Stephen Hippler sentenced him on July 23rd. The ruling ends the grisly case that had gripped Idaho since 2022's murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Before the sentence, more than a dozen relatives and friends were given the chance to step up to the lectern. Many unleashed raw grief and anger. Kaylee's sister Olivia stared him down and vowed her sister would have fought back. Others branded him as, quote, a faceless coward, end quote, and predicted in prison some violence towards him. But there were also some very positive reactions, those that kind of cut through the bitterness with some unexpected free grace. Xana Kernoodle's aunt told Kohberger she had forgiven him because Christ had first forgiven her, urging him to repent and seek the Lord while he still breathes. One surviving roommate echoed that call, reminding the courtroom that ultimate justice belongs to God. Kohberger in shackles and in an orange jumpsuit kind of paints this picture, declined to speak. As for what's going to happen next, marshals have already moved him to Idaho Maximum Security Institution in Kuna, the state's highest security lockout that we have here. Their officials typically keep notorious inmates in near solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, in an 8 by 12 foot cell, limited showers, and razor wire ringed yards for brief exercise. He will live among the state's death row wing, yet never facing execution, barred by his plea deal that we've talked about. Also, if you didn't know, Idaho's Son of Sam laws block him from profiting off the crime if he tries to peddle a prison memoir. In short, Brian Kohberger leaves public view for a lifetime of concrete walls and locked steel doors. For the families, the earthly court has spoken. Now, many entrust the final verdict to a higher one. And coming out of crime and more into business, last week we raised eyebrows at Simplot's expansion abroad while trimming its Boise staff. Now, Eagle-based Weston serves up a similar recipe: fewer jobs and fatter margins. On July 23rd, the French fry titan said it would shed 4% of its global workforce, about 428 positions, some already vacant though. The timing is a little bit stinging, with Weston employing more than 1,000 Idahoans across Eagle's HQ, plants in Twin Falls, and American Falls. Yet the company framed the cuts as part of a Focus to Win plan to save $250 million by 2028. As for Wall Street, they applauded. Quarterly earnings hit about 87 cents per share, above analyst targets, and revenue grew 4%, powered by the strong fry sales. Investors rewarded the belt tightening with the stock's best single jump ever, up roughly 20%, topping the entire S&P 500 that day. In contrast, though, Main Street had some concerns. Idaho's two potato powerhouses, Simplot and now Weston, are chasing global profit while pruning local payrolls. Activist investors press for higher returns, and executive promise categorical leading innovation, end quote. Meanwhile, our neighborhoods read pink slips. A little frustrating there. As stewards of this state, we must ask, do corporate strategies that thrill Wall Street actually still bless Main Street? The potato built these Idaho brands. Maybe preserving the people who grow the process and ship it should matter more than just the quarterly gains. But there again, business. If you've enjoyed the Midweek Report so far and made it this far, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe/follow button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us stay connected with you and makes you the most informed Idahoan in the room. And speaking about food and health, RFK Jr. spent 2 days in Boise, celebrating Idaho's role in Making America Healthy Again push. Standing with Governor Brad Little, he hailed Idaho as, quote, the home of medical freedom, end quote. And he watched Little proclaim August as Keep Idaho Healthy Month. He applauded new state laws like the banning of mask mandates, vaccine requirements, and even the soda and candy purchases with SNAP that was prevented, saying Idaho leads the nation in protecting individual health choices. Granted, there was a little bit of a catch, though, when he voiced openness to breaching the lower Snake River dams to help salmon runs during a stop with the Nez Perce leaders. His remarks clashed with President Trump's June order that shields these dams, citing their 3,000 megawatt output and their crucial importance for farmer shipping lanes. Many Idahoans see Trump's action as vital for keeping the lights on and grain moving. Kennedy's comments triggered some fresh worry that outside pressure could undercut Idaho's power and ag backbone. In conclusion, we can thank the Secretary for spotlighting our state's stand for health, liberty, and self-reliance. Still, any plan that threatens the dams and the affordable energy, irrigation, and jobs they provide undermines the very well-being he came to champion. So let's keep Idaho healthy and keep those dams standing. And speaking of ruffling feathers, Dorothy Moon just triggered another Idaho GOP dust up, because can't go too long without those. 2 months after she hired Executive Director Anthony Tarantino on May 27th, Tarantino's lawyers fired back. In a July 16 email copied to the entire executive committee, counsel said Moon can't axe staff without the committee's vote, and slapped her with a litigation hold on every document tied to Tarantino and past directors. Letters also warn that late pay could triple damages under Idaho wage law. For context, if you're listening to about this for the first time, Tarantino is Moon's 4th executive director since she became chair in 2022. That turnover has fueled critics who say the party's inner office looks as chaotic as Boise rush hour. Supporters, however, counter that Moon still delivers wins, from defeating ranked choice voting to shepherding tax cuts. But this public spat could drain cash and focus heading into the 2026 cycle. The committee now has 10 days to meet and review the attempted dismissal. If talks fail, expect court filings and possible dirty laundry. For the full backstory, read our detailed article on Local Yokel Idaho that we'll have linked below. And speaking of danger, Central Idaho's Salmon Chalice National Forest moved into a very high fire danger on July 21st. Hot, dry weather has turned grass and timber into tinder. A single spark could launch a fast-moving blaze. As of recording the first of this week, crews have not reported any active fires inside the Central Idaho Dispatch Zone. The closest trouble sits deep in the Frank Church Wilderness, the Big Bear and Rush fires, together topping about 15,000 acres, continuing to smolder without containment but remain well south of Salmon's front country. That said, fire officials warn that people, not lightning, starts most Idaho blazes. They are urging campers to drown, stir, and fuel every campfire until it's, quote, as cold as the creek, end quote. Keeping vehicles off dry grass, securing trailer chains, and skipping target practice near brush. In short, they're saying that Central Idaho stands one ignition away from a season-shaping fire. So let's steward God's gift of this beautiful creation, clean defensive spaces, and pray for rain, plus leave the forest as you found it so that it doesn't catch fire. And coming back to the Treasure Valley, Sturgis broke ground on a 700-seat, $22 million elementary that will open in the fall of 2026. West Ada says the new campus stops 45-minute bus rides that were bringing Star kids home. But the celebration comes with Nampa shuttering 4 buildings, after losing about 2,000 students and carrying about $149 million in repairs it couldn't afford. And looking at that split between Star and Nampa, families across the Treasure Valley are now voting with their feet and their wallets, it appears. Governor Lil's parental choice tax credit, if you didn't hear, signed in February, lets parents claim up to $5,000 per child, or $7,500 for special needs students for private tuition, curriculum, or tutoring, starting with 2025 expenses. Nearly $50 million in credits will become available when applications open in January 15th, 2026. While West Ada still plans 8 more schools by 2034 at roughly $35 million each. You can do the math there. The funding for those primarily, though, came from the new state facility, money that was folded in from House Bill 521. Yet public scores, even with this expanded brick and mortar, lag and enrollment seems to wobble, as we've seen in Nampa. Star's shiny campus may sit full today, but Nampa proves brick and mortar cannot fix a system that fails to form wise, virtuous citizens. Idahoans should, and are starting to take stewardship of their children's education. Lawmakers should follow the lead, expanding choice, restraining spending, and keeping the classroom local. Did you know about the new classrooms and all the different things they have planned there, or the school choice bill that was passed? If you didn't, or any of the other topics we've talked about here on the Midweek Report, please don't hesitate to share it with friends and family so they can be informed Idahoans. And speaking of cities, Meridian City Council just voted to give Mayor Robert Simmons a pay raise. But council members will not see any extra dollars in their checks for the next 2 years. This decision comes after the Meridian Compensation Committee recommended raises for both the mayor and city council. The council was divided on this, though. The mayor's raise squeaked by with 3 in favor, 2 against vote, with the mayor himself pushing the decision over the line. Supporters said the mayor's salary should reflect the city's growth and mounting responsibilities. Some members argued that higher council pay could attract more diverse candidates in the future, diverse being a curious word to choose there. Those who resisted the council raised, pointing to timing, with Meridian possibly asking voters to approve a new public safety levy this fall. In conclusion, the mayor will see his salary jump about $3,500 in 2026 and again in 2027, while the council pay remains unchanged. This debate shows Meridian's leadership feels the real pressure of growth, tight budgets, which everyone's having to do lately, and the challenge of fair compensation for public service. And getting out of the Treasure Valley and going into the wonderful mountains, the Forest Service just announced $80 million in wood innovation grants that will hopefully directly benefit our state's timber industry. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins made this announcement on July 17th, delivering on President Trump's commitment to put American resources first. Here in Idaho, we've already seen some of the results. The University of Idaho has 2 active projects, each receiving $250,000 in federal funding. One explores commercial construction using heavy timber, while others develop microturbine power from wood waste. Shannon Carroll from the Idaho Forest Group told local press that this funding, quote, supports the long-term management of forest lands and creates jobs in rural areas. She added that Secretary Rollins clearly recognizes, end quote, the essential role that the wood products industry plays in not only forest stewardship, but in job creation and building resilient rural economies, end quote. The USDA pledged an additional $23 million in May to transport hazardous fuels like dead trees from national forest land to processing facilities. This removes fire risk while creating economic value, exactly the kind of practical forest management we need. This approach puts American workers and towns first, supporting healthy forests through healthy forest economies. And I swear, we're ping-ponging between the mountains and the valley here. Coming back to Ada County, some good news. The sheriff's office is expanding their training facility because they're actually having too many deputies to train properly. Sheriff Matt Clifford says people are literally standing on hallways and peering through doorways just to attend training classes at their current 16 square foot Meridian facility. The solution? Ada County will lease a 38,000 square foot warehouse on East Landlark Street, more than doubling their space. The county will spend just over $346,000 in improvements, while the landlords are contributing about $100,000. This means deputies can finally train in proper classrooms instead of crowded hallways. The new facility will include showers, a gym, classrooms, and even possibly a mock village where deputies can practice real-world scenarios. Ada County commissioners will vote on the lease agreement August 12th. This shows how we continue to back our law enforcement here in Idaho, while other places across the country defund their police. The Ada County Sheriff's Office employs over 800 people, making it Idaho's largest local law enforcement agency. And then heading west to Nampa, the voters over there will have to wait a little bit longer to learn whether they'll get a say on the Forward Idaho Center's future this November. The City Council was set to decide Monday whether to put the ballot question about transferring the center to the College of Western Idaho before voters, but they pushed the choice to their August 18th meeting. Before they vote, the council members will host a town hall on August 11th where residents can weigh in. As for what's at stake here, the council could ask voters 2 different questions in November. The first, an advisory question about whether they support giving the center to CWI. Second would be a levy to override the fund of $25 million and backed up maintenance over the next 15 years. Some council members prefer the levy question because it shows voters the real cost of keeping the center, while others want the advisory question to gauge what residents actually want. There's also uncertainty about whether state law even allows the advisory questions on the November's ballot. City staff are still researching what questions they can legally ask voters on the ballot. Either way, we'll know by late August what choices we might face here in November. Both questions should let Nampa residents have their say on this major community asset. At this point, if you've got to this point in the Midweek Report, you probably enjoy Idaho. Please consider subscribing or following us so you don't miss our future Midweek Reports. And coming to our last set here, families across Boise will soon pay more to get their trash picked up. The City Council approved a 9% rate increase for residential customers, pushing the annual cost from $260 to $284. That means you'll pay an extra $24 per year to have your garbage hauled away. We did the math there for you. As for why these costs are going higher, the city granted Republic Services an 11.75% rate increase, with about 40% of that increase going towards new electric garbage trucks and their maintenance. While the city claims wage increases are essential, they're also pushing ahead with their electric vehicle agenda. This marks the third consecutive year of rate hikes. Since 2023, the annual trash bill has jumped 22.4%. Man, that is a bit. I don't know if that's just Biden or Boise. And then meanwhile, on top of that, Boise hasn't even put this contract out for a competitive bid since 1994, over 30 years ago. Commercial consumers face a smaller 4% increase, though, and industrial users see just about 3%. Once again, families bear the heaviest burden, while the city pursues its climate goals. These rate increases take effect in October when the new fiscal year begins. And speaking of costs, and going back up into the mountains because we've gone in and out of those multiple times in this episode, the Stibnite mine hit another legal roadblock. Last Thursday, the Idaho Conservation League and Save the South Fork Salmon filed a suit against our state's Department of Environmental Quality over the mine's air quality permit. The group claims IDQ failed to protect public health when they approved the permit, specifically citing concerns about arsenic exposure from dust and particulates that the mine could release. They argue that the permit lacks proper monitoring and even exempts the public Stibnite road from air pollution protection. Perpetual Resources, who owns the mine, fired back, as you can guess. They say the project already cleared years of rigorous science-based analysis, and that these are the same, quote, previously discredited claims, end quote, that they faced before. DEQ says they're reviewing the petition but can't comment during active litigation. This timing, for context, couldn't be more significant, as the Trump administration pushes America toward energy independence and domestic mineral production. Stibnite represents our only potential domestic source of antium critical for defense applications. The mine has already secured its final federal permit this past May. But here we are again, watching another legal challenge potentially delay a project that could strengthen our national security while cleaning up an already polluted abandoned mine site. The question remains, when does environmental review become environmental obstruction? And speaking of businesses struggling, the original Sunrise Cafe in Fairview has served its last meal. After years of financial struggles, owner Boomer Godsill and property owner Stephen Neighbors reached a mutual agreement to close the location permanently. This closure follows a troubling pattern for Godsill's restaurant empire. Court recordings show he owes over $35,000 to Shamrock Foods just for this location, adding to hundreds of thousands owed across his other ventures. In the Valley, we've already seen 2 of the other locations shut down due to similar financial troubles. But though there is good news for those of you out there that are Sunrise fans, the Meridian, Middleton, and Caldwell locations remain open and serving. The Meridian spot on Main Street has been the anchor location since 1988, carrying on the original family tradition. As for the Fairview property, it won't stay empty long though. Neighbors is doing a complete renovation and already has a verbal agreement with new owners who plan to open another breakfast and lunch spot. Sometimes when one door closes, God opens another. The Boise area will hopefully have a new place to gather over good food. And coming to our last story, if you love the great outdoors, the Deer Flat Wildlife Refuge wants to buy 50 more acres east of Lake Lowell. Given the rapid growth of the Treasure Valley, they see it as a must to protect the natural space. Refuge manager Eddie Owens has been working on this deal for 3 years now. The land sits west of 12th Avenue Road and East Lewis Lane, and if they can close the deal, it'll extend the refuge boundary all the way to Highway 45. That means no houses, no strip malls, because we just can't have enough of those, just the habitat for local wildlife. The refuge already picked up about 30 acres last year, and both properties are set to be shrubland habitat. In conclusion, Owens put it that school kids should be able to see what this valley looked like 200 years from now. If everything goes smoothly, both properties could open to the public by late 2026. And sadly, with that opening, we do have to close. Thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content on our Substack, which will be linked below. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at LocalYokelIdaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.